Duke Nukem is a dead franchise at this point, which is a shame because Duke Nukem 3D is one of my favorite games of all time, and arguably the greatest first-person shooter ever made. Everyone knows the story of Duke Nukem Forever, so there's no real point of recounting it in detail. After constant engine changes, studio downsizing, and what seemed like endless delays, Duke Nukem Forever was finally completed by Triptych Games and Piranha Games, and then released by Gearbox Software. Duke Nukem Forever felt like a shell of a game, and my biggest issue with it is that it never stuck to its guns, or did anything that made Duke 3D such a good game to begin with. It relied on modern first-person shooter tropes like regenerating health and a 2-weapon limit. The art style was so uninspired, and it didn't have an identity of its own because it was too busy imitating what has come since Duke 3D's release. My disappointment with Duke Nukem Forever can be like a 2-hour video, so I'll leave that game alone for now. In 2016, Gearbox re-released Duke Nukem 3D with its 20th anniversary World Tour edition, and tacked on a new episode, which was made by a couple of the original level designers. There were a few more bells and whistles that Gearbox put into this release, like an enhanced lighting mode, new recorded Duke lines, and developer commentary, but overall, World Tour was a disappointing port of this very classic game. Now, the new episode itself is quite good, but there were a number of little issues I had with the port that turned me away. It's definitely a death by 1,000 cuts situation with World Tour, and it's so annoying to say that because Duke Nukem 3D deserved a great port on modern systems. Gearbox's re-release came out in 2016, as I've said, you know, when I was in fucking high school, and since then, there has basically been radio silence surrounding the future of the Duke Nukem series. Like I said in the beginning, Duke is a dead franchise, at this point at least, but what if there was a new game in development? What would that look like? Well, today I wanted to give my ideas on how to reboot Duke Nukem. Now, there's an obvious blueprint on how to reboot classic shooters in the modern era with Doom 2016 and even Shadow Warrior, and you best believe we'll be taking some of that into account. First off, let's get the basic mechanics out of the way. This Duke Nukem reboot will have a traditional health system with armor, and you can carry all of your guns at the same time. I know that all of these recent throwback shooters feature both of those elements, and that it kinda goes without saying, but I'm just making it crystal clear. A traditional health system and being able to carry all of your guns. I mean, the last game in the series was Duke Nukem Forever, for fuck's sake. Speaking of which, the Duke Nukem reboot will stick to shooting only, and there should absolutely not be any driving or turret sections. Of course there will be exploration involved, just like how Duke Nukem 3D had plenty of secrets and little areas to uncover, but shooting will be at the core of this reboot. It felt like Duke Nukem Forever needed to compensate by having other types of gameplay, but all of them were subpar and they didn't flow with one another. I do appreciate that Duke Nukem Forever stuck to the old school level structure, level by level, no hub worlds or anything, but that game was actually too segmented. Levels were chopped up into parts and it felt like you were getting served a tiny appetizer of a level instead of the whole course. With Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal, levels are huge and encourage players to explore, and this Duke Nukem reboot should follow suit. What kind of levels should we see though, and where should the game be set in? Well, Duke Nukem Forever was set in Las Vegas, which is honestly the perfect location for a Duke Nukem game. Part of the reason why Duke Nukem Forever is such a tragic game is because when it was first being developed in the 90s, it looked like the perfect Duke Nukem sequel. Las Vegas looked bright and colourful in the early trailers, but compare that to what we actually got in 2011 and it's fucking unbelievable. With that in mind, I think if there was another Duke Nukem game, they should play it a little safe and just stick to Los Angeles and some alien locations later on in the campaign like in Duke 3D. Doom 2016 only included Mars and Hell locations, and that ultimately worked, so I think the same should happen for a Duke Nukem reboot. Setting maybe one level in Las Vegas would be cool, just to see how good a Duke game could actually look and feel in that location. Las Vegas is ripe with potential, but it was squandered in Duke Nukem Forever, unfortunately. With the city levels, they should take a page out of Duke 3D and especially Ion Fury's book by having grimy locations with neon lights. Duke 3D had silly posters and interactive gags occasionally, but the world, at the time at least, was semi-realistic and had a seedy vibe to it. Don't make the art style totally bland or anything like Serious Sam 3, but I'm thinking that the location should look like a cross between Blade Runner and Escape from New York. Then as the game goes on, you would see more abstract levels with alien technology. The level design itself needs to stand on its own 2 feet and not be a carbon copy of Doom 2016 or Shadow Warrior, so that means no arena combat should be in Duke Nukem. All fixed enemy placements, and if possible, there should be maze-like level design with key hunts, opportunities to use the jetpack to find secrets, small vents that can be accessed with the shrink ray, etc. Also, the interactivity in this game needs to be properly rewarded. Maybe have an upgrade system where if you interact with the environment, the player gets a token to spend. Increasing your health bar could be an option that you go with in the upgrade menu, but it shouldn't be the only reward for interacting with the environment like in Duke Nukem Forever. I would fucking jump for joy if this existed in a new Duke Nukem title, but now we need to address Duke himself. Instead of being a downright parody of his former self like in Duke Nukem Forever, he needs to be a badass first and foremost. He had silly lines in Duke Nukem 3D for sure, but they were all emulating action movie stars. However, with Duke Nukem Forever, I didn't know what the fuck they were going for. He just seemed cringy, but I don't think that's because the character that we saw in Duke 3D aged poorly. It was more due to the fact that he seemed like a completely different character in Duke Nukem Forever. He was a goofball, and the world around him was a ridiculous parody, which didn't work at all, and that was not how Duke Nukem 3D was. A little bit of that goofiness works, kinda like how it's done in Doom 2016, but there's a gigantic gap between how Duke Nukem Forever handles its characterization compared to Doom 2016. With that in mind, Duke Nukem needs to be more badass and stick to his action hero roots, instead of being whatever the fuck he was in Duke Nukem Forever. As for the story, keep it simple. Aliens invade Earth, Duke needs to stop them. Along the way, there obviously needs to be little story beats, but I don't think they need to have any side characters or that kind of stuff like how there was in Duke Nukem Forever. Duke Nukem is the focus. Don't have supporting roles that aren't funny to begin with. So those are my initial ideas for a Duke Nukem reboot. I feel like Duke Nukem 3D and Duke Nukem Forever are wildly different games in terms of tone, which I know that hardcore Duke fans have picked up on, and if a reboot comes out, I hope it's more in line with classic Duke Nukem. I didn't go into actual story beats because the plot should honestly be quite minimal. I fucking love Duke Nukem, and it's a tragedy that Duke Nukem Forever ended up the way it did. It was such a disappointment that the entire franchise has now become dormant. Gearbox has a lot to do with this as well, by doing the bare fucking minimum with releasing Duke 3D and not treating Duke Nukem to some new games, but to be fair, I understand why Gearbox isn't going to make another title. There would be way too much expectation if Gearbox decided to make a brand new Duke Nukem game, and the legacy of the character and series has kind of been poisoned by everything that has gone on. Here's hoping that Duke gets the Doom 2016 treatment though. I mean, one of Duke's build engine contemporaries is still going strong with the Shadow Warrior reboot games, so anything is possible.